The hurt doesn't show, but the pain still grows. Some stranger to you and me. I can feel it coming in the air tonight. Oh Lord, but I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. Oh Lord.
Well, good evening, guys, and welcome to the DFS Advisor live podcast on Wednesday night at 8 o'clock. We're presented by Inner Circle Entertainment, and we are sponsored by Premier Properties. I want to always thank Steve and Nikki and our sponsors. This week, we're still without our co-host, Jay. Jay will be back next week, up and ready to go. Bryce is a little preoccupied with school, so we will catch up with them guys starting next week. We got a lot going on. We got news we're going to start out with. Big news with Rashid Rice coming off his suspension, return to practice for the Chiefs. I know Patrick Mahomes is probably looking forward to having him back in his arsenal of wide receivers. And then we got the Titans coach firing Brian Callahan over there in Tennessee. I really don't know why they let him go this quick. Obviously, they're struggling. 1-5, not doing all that great. They need a quarterback coach in there to help their young rookie get situated and get going. So the Titans are moving on from Brian. And some other news, which a lot of fantasy owners would be glad to hear this. The Jags announced today that how many times have we heard this? That Hunter's going to have a bigger role on offense. I know all the Hunter owners would be glad to see him get some more offensive snaps and get some more fantasy points on the board for that. And, the trade deadline is looming, coming up, getting ready to start November 4th. There's a lot of talk of running backs moving around. There's some pretty decent running backs that, are available to be traded. I know the Patriots are kind of talking, they're looking. The Chiefs have been talking that they're looking. I'm not really sure if, Kamara is going to be available. The Saints are kind of looking at getting into next year. Probably wouldn't mind having some draft picks. I've looked for Kamara to be getting moved all along. I thought he would have been traded already, but they're talking about Ford up there in Cleveland. He may be available soon. Defensive ends, are wanting some pretty good money. The ones that are out there are looking to get paid right away. So, Cincinnati's playing this week, and on Thursday night, they're going to be up against Pittsburgh. I don't know if they'd be willing to get rid of their tight end their defensive end. I know the Bucs are looking for some defensive help. You always hear about Crosby being available, not being available. I highly doubt the Raiders would let that guy walk. But so the trade deadline's coming up. Be looking for that. Be looking for some of these players to be moved around before the deadline. We got some things happening in some other sports tonight. I believe we got some baseball going on. The playoffs are in full swing, and I believe the Mariners lucked out going into Toronto and taking 2 games. They're leading the series, and they're back at home tonight. They got their bullpen kind of healthy and back. I look for the Mariners to pretty much walk away with this series, and now they're home. So I think they'll have a pretty good chance of winning tonight. And then tomorrow, you got the Dodgers and the Brewers. They're, again, a 2-game lead. The Dodgers went in and took some, home games away from Milwaukee, and I think they lead that series 2-0 also. So Baseball's picking up. We're getting into the month of October when things get special with baseball. I know I'm not a huge baseball fan myself, but I don't mind watching the playoffs, and I don't mind watching the World Series, obviously. So looking forward to some good baseball. And if you're a baseball fan, you could be tuning into that. I think the Mariners game started at 8:08, and the Dodgers in Milwaukee, I think they got an early evening game tomorrow. Some other things we wanted to talk about before we get going is some college football. The AP 25 came out, top 25. Ohio State's looking good. The Hurricanes are looking good there at number 2. I've got some interest in the number 19 down there. South Florida Bulls. They're playing some good football. They lost. Their only loss was to Miami Hurricanes early in the year. So I'm looking forward to them. I'm scheduled to go to some of their home games this year. And so I'm looking forward to them playing. Another big game, too, this week is going to be Ole Miss and Georgia. Georgia's going to have to pick it up a little bit. And Oregon's playing good football. Alabama has moved up consistently throughout the year. Memphis has popped up in there. Cincinnati's popped up in there. Indiana, to me, has been the big surprise at number 3. They are playing really good football. So looking forward to some of those college games. Our college football resident, Jay, he'll be back next week, and he'll be picking up with the college stuff and getting you guys going with your Devy leagues and picking up the pace on the college football. So keep your Saturdays open, to learn a little bit more about college game. And we got some DB leagues that we're in, and things are picking up. Guys are making big trades in a lot of the leagues. So that's something that's happening. This week, our injury report, anymore with these NFL injuries, it's crazy. I mean, the amount of guys, I don't think out of all the years I've been watching football, that I've seen this many injuries. I mean, it is just crazy, the amount of injuries, and to star players. I mean, it's just nuts. So guys that drafted in their fantasy leagues and did a lot of handcuffing, if you're a handcuff type of guy, your season is probably going to be saved. Some of these guys not coming back in time for some of these guillotine leagues, it's going to be crazy. The waiver wire anymore, there ain't much left. Everybody's, taking these dart throws, trying to figure out who's going to play. Everybody thought Haskins was going to be the guy out there in California for the Chargers. And, he didn't pan out, and a lot of people picked him up. And he didn't play that much. So it's kind of a dart throw thing with all these injuries. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. for Arizona for the Cardinals. Doubtful he's going to make it this week with a concussion. You got Puka Nacua for the Rams. His ankle injury, he's not going to probably play this week. Garrett Wilson for the Jets, knee injury. He's probably not going to play. So if you got Mason Taylor, tight end, he's probably going to be the lead offensive pass catcher for the Jets if Fields can get him the ball. You got a Mbuka is going to be out with his hammy deal. That hurts some of my stock in him. I've got quite a bit. It doesn't look like the injury was that serious. His MRI came back not too bad, but I don't look for him to play this week. Ridley for the Titans, he's got a hammy deal. Doesn't look to play this week. And then you've got some of these guys that have been on IR and been hurt that are possibly going to come back this week. CeeDee Lamb is, looking at a maybe. I wouldn't be surprised for that to be right up to game time with him. Evans for the Bucs is real sketchy coming off his hammy injury. I know a lot of talk here in town is that he is going to play. So I would probably be comfortable starting Evans for the Bucs. And then, the 49ers have been almost as bad as the Bucs with their injury problems. Kittle's supposed to be back on the field. He was back at practice. And then J.J. McCarthy for the Vikings. He was at practice today. Even their backup, Wentz is hurt. They did do primarily a walkthrough practice today. Looks like Wentz is a little bit further ahead than McCarthy is. So one of those two will probably be in there. But again, from a fantasy standpoint, you're not knowing who to start, who to take a chance on. It's just it's a dart throw these days in fantasy. So hopefully you did a lot of handcuffing in your drafts. I know in best ball I did, so that's a good thing. So my best ball leagues are looking pretty good this year. Not so good in some of my startup dynasty leagues and some of the orphan leagues I took. Not doing too great in those, but I know that the guillotine style leagues that we are a part of. Some of those I'm doing okay in, some of them not too good. I know a lot of league mates are really excited about that getting to the cutoffs. Some of the bracket ball leagues that we're in, those are picking up. I got pretty lucky this week and had some real close wins. Bijan definitely bailed me out of a lot of close calls this week in fantasy. So having him was pretty great. We're going to move on into a segment that kind of got thrown in my lap. As a lot of you guys know, we are putting together an app for the DFS Advisor. It's a pay app. So a lot of legal work is being done behind the scenes. A lot of, grassroots groundwork. It's all new to me. We've hired a legal team to help us get all that going. It's really going to supplement a lot of the things that I'm doing with the Tampa media. So this week was a learning process for me. And along the way, the legal side of DFS is a big thing. I didn't pay that much attention to it. Obviously, as playing fantasy and doing DFS, I'm well aware of a lot of the gambling issues and stuff, but never really did a deep dive into it till I hired a legal team for what I'm doing with the app. And so this week, there was some pretty big news in the state of California this week. Early in July, the Attorney General in California put out some pretty stiff warnings about fantasy, DFS, gambling, sports betting, and pretty much laid out a pretty stringent plan of where the state of California was headed in gambling, and specifically to sports betting. So he put that out in July. Governor Newsom out there didn't really like it. In fact, disagreed with it. And so they were kind of going back and forth, and a lot of it was kind of put on hold. Well, surprise, surprise, the Indian reservations, just like they did here in Florida, got involved and started putting pressure on the governor out there. And the governor signed into law this week. Just so you guys got a little background, this one's going to be tough to see, but here's a little background on what the Attorney General put out in the state of California back in July. Okay. And if you I don't want to get into all the little fine print, because you got to be an attorney to read half of it. But anyways, that came out in July. And then this is what went into law. This was signed this last weekend into law in the state of California. And, the gambling and contests and sweepstakes and all this different wording, the sports betting has been a big thing in the state of Florida. I know last year in 2024, we were actually shut off from it for a while they haggled it out. A lot of your DFS operators, like, DraftKings, like Prize Picks, even Sleeper, that are doing some of these DFS daily stuff, really had to fight to keep their spots. a lot of pressure was put on the states. A lot of pressure was put on the government, whether they were going to allow it, not allow it, in which ways they were going to allow it. So what ended up happening is a lot of these operators, they kept fighting in court over the past year and a half, 2 years. And it's the same thing that's getting ready to happen in the state of California. They're going to have to battle it out. And in the meantime, due to the fact that a lot of these states have not been pricks, basically, and fined a lot of these people when they could have made their lives miserable. They've allowed them to kind of work through it. Florida finally got pretty shitty with everybody and told them, look, we're either going to take your licenses away, we're going to fine you, you could possibly be doing jail time. And so some of them left the state of Florida. Some of them changed the way they were doing it and went peer-to-peer versus house. And so there was some things that they did to dance around it. And that's what's getting ready to happen in California. These operators are going to have to dance around it. So one little plus from my media thing that I've been doing in Tampa gave me an opportunity to do some interviews this week. I was on the phone with the Attorney General's office in California. They declined to comment on the questions that I had. I did have an opportunity to talk to a couple of the operators. I talked to Prize Picks. They did an interview with me. I did an interview with Sleeper. Sleeper was probably one of the most informational and one of the most helpful on what their plan is, what they're doing. Should their players be worried? Should, league commissioners be worried about what they're doing? And on and on and on. So it's been a pretty fun week, actually, for me. I spent a lot of time involved in this. And, you got some of the states that are like, no way, no how. We're not going to allow any type of DFS sports betting, fantasy leagues, whether they're skill, not skill. They're not going to argue whether it's skill or chance is going to allow them to play in their states. So like Hawaii, Idaho, Montana, those are some of the states. Washington, absolutely none of it is allowed. Obviously Nevada falls into that also. But one little thing Nevada did is they allowed the operators, your DraftKings, your sleepers, they went to them and said, hey, y'all can operate, but you're going to have to get licensed in the state of Nevada to do it and play by all the same rules all the casinos do and everybody else. Well, what ended up happening, why most of the operators did not take Nevada up on that, is they would have been admitting, because in the licensing, the licensing literature that they give, that they have to apply for, basically they're admitting to being gambling and betting. And so the majority of them said, no way, no how, we're not doing that, because that would screw us in all of our other states by admitting that we are a gambling operation. So that's why you don't see anybody in the state of Nevada. It isn't because Nevada wouldn't allow it. Nevada would allow it, but they had to follow by the same rules as everybody else, all the casinos. So the Indian reservations really put the squeeze on Newsom, made him sign this stuff into law. And this isn't just about sports betting. It's about their sweepstakes. It's about lottery type stuff. It's about, all kinds of things in California that are fixing to change. And I would say my opinion after all of this week is I think they're going to fall into the same lines as like Florida did. They're going to make like what Prize Picks did, switch it over to where it's not house and you're playing peer to peer. And, it just isn't actually sports betting in the eyes of some. Now, in others, it is. Like the Attorney General, in California, he is flat ass convinced that it's gambling and is going to fight it. But I think he's kind of pissing up a rope with it, to be honest with you. Over the course of time, I think you'll see it shake out somewhat like it did in Florida. And then you got some of your other states, which Florida, Michigan, New York, they kind of were real hardcore about it, but allowed these guys to change their content and change the rules of how they're doing their applications as operators. And Texas is another battleground like California. There's a lot of new laws happening in Texas with DFS and fantasy sports. Some of the hardest things to get around. I really learned a lot also this week about League Safe. A lot of people claim that League Safe kind of is the house. Well, League Safe really isn't the house. League Safe, primarily just holds the money and allows the leagues to pay the leagues out, and they only take a fee charge based on the amount of money you spend. So that's how they're getting paid. Now, however, there has been on record some of your league commissioners, some of your league pools, and primarily this happens in your collective pools where people are, doing multiple leagues and making their pots really, really big so they have big payoffs. And this is also happening in where leagues are taking a commissioned fee to their league players and rolling money over in their League Safe accounts, applying it to a commissioner paid management fee. Some claim that they're using it for trophies or for other things within the league. Some of that is legal, some of it is not. You are not allowed as a commissioner to take money out of your leagues and pay more than 5 people, and you then become an operator. You can't use that prize pool money to pay people. Now, you can use it for like a commissioner management fee, and it's paid to him directly. But those funds can't be taken and added back into a prize pool. So in other words, you can't take that money and add it back into an existing prize pool for that league. This doesn't happen so much with just your little leagues, like when I say little leagues, like your one-off leagues where you have a commissioner trying to get a management fee for $10-12 for the year. This is primarily happening in the leagues that are taking a lot of money and playing a lot of different ruled type games. And there's a lot of them out there. So there is some red flags being tossed around with some of these leagues. Fantasy has gotten away with saying and proving that it is not a chance game, that it is a skilled game. There's a lot of different opinions on that. I, for one, believe it takes skill to run a fantasy team and be successful at it. I do believe there is some chance in it. That's obviously true just with injuries. There's chance involved. There's chance that Liam Cohen decides to sit a player for just to give him rest. That's chance. So, but the skill has definitely proven out that it outweighs the chance. And that's what a lot of these operators, fantasy, DraftKings, Prize Picks, they're all now very safe, if you will, to say that, these leagues are run and not gambling because they are done based off of skill. And the majority of your states allow that type of gambling if it's based off of skill. So where you start running into problems again is the outright betting. And the only reason I kind of needed to be involved in this, and you say, Jim, what the hell does all this mean? You play fantasy, you bet just like the rest of them. Yes, I do. However, getting ready to start my own business and getting my app done and doing all the legal stuff to it, I kind of had to check up a little bit and learn something and listen to people because, some of the insurances you have to have, the licensing, these are not cheap things to do. And if you don't do them right, you stand a chance of losing everything you own. So my investment, I wanted to be safe. So I hired, a legal team. So it's kind of been cool. It's been fun. I don't really have that much more to say about it other than another thing I learned, guys and girls, is you're reporting on your winnings. Make sure League Safe offers, the W-9, and stay on top of that because those are some of the things that are being watched by some of these states. And they, they're kind of proving points with it. So, any of you guys that are, lucky enough to win over $600 a year, I know I do. I just won a great big basketball tournament back in March. It paid me $1,700 that I'm going to be paying taxes on. So all I'm saying is pay attention, do it right. If you choose to just keep doing what you've been doing and have fun at it. That's the main thing, is that you're having fun, because the money to be made from a player is not all that great. The odds of winning championships is pretty tough in today's fantasy world. All right. So enough of all that. We're going to move into a segment that I put together because of another thing that is getting ready to happen. But we're going to start off by calling this Tailgaters Deluxe. We did a little bit of research to find out who we think has the best tailgating in the NFL. Is it Bills Mafia? Is it the Chiefs barbecue? Is it the Packers and their beer and their brats and their, the fans owning the team? So we did a little research. We did a little mailbag fun during the week online and got some people to come in and give their experiences of tailgating. And so that was pretty fun to hear about. I know I had a football tailgating experience once. I got the chance to go to a Steelers game one time, and where we tailgated was underneath this bridge down by Three Rivers Stadium, underneath this highway bridge. And I am not kidding you. These guys were taking and doing like bungee swings off the bridge and trying to play beer pong while swinging in these bungee things. It was crazy, but it was a lot of fun. So I'm sure you got some fun stories of, either a dad and a kid or your grandpa or something. So this Tailgaters Deluxe kind of thing is something that we're going to do all this year, because what we're going to do is we're going to try to take tailgating experience to people that are less fortunate, seniors that can't get out of their own homes, disabled children that, don't get a chance to get out and go to games, some teenage disabled kids that are having a hard time getting around. So my wife is a caregiver. She deals with, hospice and does a lot of that. So we've been kind of putting together a thing that we're going to start doing, where we're going to take and do some tailgating with some, not so fortunate people. We're going to take the tailgating to them. We're going to do it in their driveways. We're going to, take a trailer. We're going to take a grill. We're going to take TV in the trailer, and we're going to try to, my wife has shown some interest with some of her clients. And so we're going to try to take advantage of that opportunity and share a tailgate experience. I know back in my NASCAR days, which we're going to talk a little bit about here in a little while, that was some of the most fun, tailgating in the infield and spending the weekend at these racetracks. You want to talk about craziness, I was in Talladega one time, and a bunch of us back then drove truck, and we all met at Talladega Speedway and spent the weekend. And I'll never forget it. We were walking around. Of course, you got the drunks walking around and everything, but this one campground right next to ours, not too far down from where we were staying, these guys had 2 truckloads of crawfish, and they were from Louisiana, and they had these live well tanks with crawfish in them. Every morning you would see these piles of crawfish shells where these guys had stayed up all night drinking beer, eating crawfish. It was just so fun. And we ended up meeting up with them. They let us come over and eat crawfish one night. So that's a good time. And while we're on the NASCAR thing, NASCAR is starting to wrap up. They're getting ready for their playoffs. They're doing some things. Denny Hamlin just sealed his fate of being in the championship run. They got 3 more races. They got Talladega this week, Martinsville, and then off to Phoenix for the championship. These lucky 8 guys all still got a chance. Like I said, Hamlin, he's locked in, and the rest of these guys are going to be racing to see what they can do and get in this desert showdown out there in Phoenix in a couple weeks. And they'll be wrapping that up in November. So looking forward to doing some NASCAR. Well, we're kind of on that subject. I was doing some picture digging, and this guy here, who's that? That's me down there at the bottom. And that young kid sitting up in that truck, that was one of my trucks I had. I had a big trucking company back in the early 90s. A buddy of mine, Tim Darling, and I had a trucking company, and I was into circle track racing in Grand Rapids, Michigan for a while. Spent more money than I needed to, but had a lot of fun. Well, in the meantime, I teamed up with a company, a guy by the name of Leroy Troop. And at that time, we had a ASA race team that I was a big part of, and Dave Sensiba drove the race car. Well, just about that time, this little guy right here, Mr. Adam Petty, he drove our other race car in the American Speed Association. And so we traveled around the United States, and this picture here was actually at the local racetrack. He was getting ready to race that day. I was actually one of the crew members. That's a crew shirt that I had on there. But Adam Petty was a good kid. We did a lot of racing together. I was pretty close with the Petty family for a while, and had a lot of good experiences right up until the time Adam was killed in New Hampshire in a practice accident. But anyway, so I had that picture. Thought I'd let you guys kind of see I had a little bit of background in NASCAR and in ASA, and some good times back in the early to mid 90s back then. But anyways, we're going to get into a segment that I know you guys like to beat me up on. So I promised I would do this every week going forward. So we're going to go back to my picks from last Thursday night, where we did the over-unders, thanks to Prize Picks. And these are all Prize Pick stuff, by the way. Anyways, so we're going to go and we're going to say last week, Barkley, the over-under, the more or the less, change the wording around a little bit, same thing, over-under, was 13.5 receiving yards. Jimbo, he said it was going to be more. Jimbo was wrong. Barkley went for 9. Barkley went for 9 receiving yards. He did not have a good game, and I thought he was going to. All right, so the next one, Mr. A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown. I thought with all the little 2-hour meeting they had that it wasn't going to do any good, and they had him pegged for 57.5 yards, more or less. Jimbo took the under on that and was wrong. Brown actually had 80 yards receiving, so I was wrong again. And then we're going to go and check out this next one, Devontae Smith. I thought he was going to have a really, really good game. He still had a pretty decent game. They had him pegged for 50.5 yards. I was wrong. He ended up getting 49 yards. Just missed that one by not too much. But anyways, I was still wrong. All right. And then Dallas Goedert, who saved a lot of people's fantasies this week. Goddard was scheduled for, they had him for 35.5 receiving yards. I took the over on that, thankfully, and Jimbo was right and won some money. So anyways, Goddard ended up going off and had 110 yards. So that was a good night for him. So that concludes the segment that I said I was going to let you guys know when I was right or wrong, because I get a lot of criticism and don't get a whole lot of accolades at times. But anyways, so that's another little fun segment we're going to be doing going forward. This week, we're going to talk about some over-unders going forward. So let's talk about the Thursday night game a little bit. We got the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cincinnati Bengals playing Thursday night. So this game is in Cincinnati, I believe. We got our new quarterback in there who's not also new. He's definitely old, just like the other guy across the other way. I know a local guy here in town said this game's going to have to get over by 9:30 because these two guys got to be in bed. You know, they're too old to be staying up this late. But anyways, the Steelers, I think, have a pretty good chance of winning this game. I think it's going to be a close game just because of the wide receiver core that Joe Flacco is going to be throwing to. They've had some injuries of their own this week. But I'm going to start off with this one because I think this one really has a pretty good chance of being a good play. Gesicki is hurt and they put him on IR. I later heard this today that I think Hudson's out also. So the Fant's been playing pretty good ball there already, which I didn't really think he would, but he's actually had a pretty good year for these guys. He was a little banged up, missed a little time, but Noah Fant's definitely going to be starting this game. And this is his receiving yards, 26.5. I'm definitely taking the over on that. Joe Flacco likes throwing to tight ends. He did a good job with Njoku. He did a good job with, Fannin already over there at Cleveland before he left. So I look for this to be an easy over. So that's my play on that one. And we'll document it. We'll tape it. We're at the 35-56 mark. So mark that down, Lisa, so we can go back and check all this. This one here, I think, is going to be touch and go. All right. So I think Flacco has an opportunity to have this many yards passing, 235. However, Ramsey's back this week, so I don't think Flacco's going to make it. I think I think he's going to have to throw to win the game. I just don't think he's got 235 yards in it. So I'm going to take the under on the Flacco side. On the Aaron Rodgers side, I think he throws for more than that, 218. I think he'll throw for more than that, even though he really doesn't have a whole lot of big receivers. But I do think he'll throw a lot to the backs. And he's got 3 tight ends to throw to, and he keeps throwing to the one that helps nobody. But anyways, so that's kind of my fun fact over under on those 2 quarterbacks. And then we got one more here that I'll throw in. Metcalf for Pittsburgh. He's at 58.5 on the receiving yards. I think he's going to be good for that. I think he busts off, Metcalf usually busts off a couple decent sized ones. Just about every game he gets like a 25, a 27. So I'm pretty comfortable with this one being a over on the 58.5 on the receiving yards for Metcalf. So we'll mark that down and see where we end up for next week. So that's kind of my over-unders. I got one more that I'm going to do, and we're going to do that. We're going to do that as, let me see if I got that covered. Yeah, we're going to do that as a Jimbo's hot take. All right, so this is a fun segment that I've been doing even back when I was a guest on the other guys' shows. Kind of had a lot of fun with this in the off season. So we're going to go ahead and keep this segment going forward. Everybody seems to have a lot of fun with it. I have fun. The chat rooms have fun with it. I see Scott in chat. Scotty, thanks for seeing you. Scott Fitzgerald's in there. Trader Clem's in there. You guys are all in there too. I appreciate you guys coming out and supporting us. Like I said, the show should pick up a little bit better than just what I do alone. When we get Jay back in here next week, we're really excited for that. All right, so here's one of Jimbo's hot takes. Here we go. So Judkins, he didn't do all that great last week, but he's going up against this Miami Dolphin defense, which sucks. I look for them to be able to roll over. I am going to not only take this over, okay, I'm going to say he gets more than 84 yards, but here's my hot take. My hot take is he's going to go for 148 yards rushing, okay? He's had 2 games already this year that he's rushed over 100 yards, so I'm confident in taking and saying he's going to rush 148. I'll stretch it out a little more. I was going to go between 130, 131, 132 in there, but I'm going to go ahead and be bold like I always am. I say he goes 148 yards in a win for Cleveland over the Miami Dolphins, which is also part 2 of my hot take for this week is he helps put the Dolphins over the edge, the owner over the edge, and this guy gets fired next week. So anyways, I don't think McDaniel's job is for long in Miami. Not only is the Dolphins struggling. Not only do they have locker room issues that this guy has not helped get under control, when this guy comes to the podium, this guy is a total idiot as far as I'm concerned. Okay. He can't even hardly get a sentence out. He acts like the president we used to have. He can't even put two words together, let alone coach a football team. I was excited for this guy when he got the job. I really was. I liked his pizzazz. I thought he was a pretty good offensive coordinator. But as a head coach, he's really been failing, and he's failing now. So I think with Judkins in Cleveland rolling them over, I think that puts the Dolphins owner over the top and ends up firing McDaniel. So that's my hot take for that. And you guys can take it or leave it. Like I always say, you can take it or leave it. It's my opinion. And so enjoy your Thursday night games. Thursday night game, just one. The Monday nighters are the ones with two these days. I think going into next week, I think the Bucks are playing Monday night with the Lions. So all you Lions fans get to see if the Bucks can go up to Michigan and pull one out. I don't know. They've been pretty lucky lately, so we'll see how they do. With Mike Evans coming back, maybe they got a chance. Baker's been playing great football. And so anyways, I'm going to say thanks to all of the legal departments that helped me out this week. Thanks to Respite Care caretakers and Premier Properties. And I'm going to leave you guys to watch the MVP of the league, which was one of my hot takes, who I believe is going to be the MVP. So y'all can go ahead and watch.
Already saw him on first down with a catch. First play of the game. Abuka you're talking about, and they may be looking his way. It's not him, but on the sideline, it is ruled a catch. Here he is on 2nd down and 8. He connects. Abuka to the San Francisco side of the 50 for 17. Rehab and recovery from an ACL and surgery in January. Here's a 1st and 10 pass play to Otten, the tight end, stays in bounds and then is picked up and thrown down. Long-standing receivers, top 2 in franchise history in receptions.
They're amazing.
2nd and 1. There's White, another guy trying a hurdle move today.
The communication, you can't just allow that to happen for San Francisco.
1st and 10.
Check it down.
And they do, and it's Otten to the 34. So already easily.
Baker's been doing an incredible job of moving defenders.
On 2nd and 10, there was a blitz and a touchdown pass as Baker reacted to the on-rusher and got rid of it in time.
And rallying tackle, someone's got to break a tackle to get this first down.
Of course, he's got Sterling Shepard out there, his old college teammate. But he's not going to have a chance. Oh, yes, he is. He fights through the sack. Looking for first down yard. Oh, my goodness, he's done it again. Oh, that is pure Baker Mayfield. Absolute Baker at his best. He fought through them all.
This is Baker Mayfield, the original OG from Oklahoma when they started with all those quarterbacks. And when I said someone needed to break a tackle, I didn't necessarily mean Baker needed to break 4 tackles.
No kidding.
But he just willed this Buccaneers team to a first down. Now he has a system, and it's in place, and they're all together. And when you win, solves a lot of stuff.
2nd and 11. Going for a big ball. Down the field. He's got an open target. Oh, what a catch. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Taz Johnson has his first NFL touchdown and a magnificent flip to go with it.
This is a simple seam route from the middle. And he's saying, hey, I'm open. He had a different route, and you have to adjust there. But Baker Mayfield's ability, he's done it many times this year.
Oh, look how he caught
It's
it.
his ability to pump fake. Now he's got the lead, though, so slightly different. You got to be protective and be smart.
Rifles it. Complete to Shepard. There goes Shepard. Shepard stays in bounds and finally slips at the 50. Since the last time.
Longest route?
that they came up with one. Longest drought all time in NFL history. Here's a pass down the middle, and Cameron Johnson has another catch. Second one in a row.